Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the 21st of October, which happens to be a beautiful Monday here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Probably the last beautiful day for a while as I look at my weather forecast. Also a brighter day simply because the Steelers have now won 2 in a row. It was a good game. I guess that's it. And the Pens are looking pretty awesome. And that completes my weather and sports cast, okay? Apologies for starting the show an hour late today, but you know the feeling. You get in your car with all good intentions of heading out to do your day, and you turn the key and nothing happens. And still unclear what that was all about, but at any rate, saved by AAA. And here we are. A bit of a hodgepodge, I suspect, today. First of all, I just want to get back into some of the emails that came in since last we spoke, often in response to things that were discussed on the last program. But the person who is now emailing was not able to listen in real time and consequently respond a little bit later. And if I find these things interesting, I pass them on to you. I had used the term something about ostriches with their heads in the sand. I think I was talking about Republicans. And I may have said, somebody said, do ostriches really put their head in the sand? Maybe that was Chris Potter. And I said, I don't know. And then I altered it anyway and said, it's really not their heads in the sand. It's their heads up there, you-know-whats. Anyway, David D'Angelo, Two Political Junkies, has sent me something. And this is how I end up with a head filled with all kinds of information that is careening around inside my brain, and sometimes retrievable and sometimes not. But I think this one is going to stick. He says they do not. This is bull. Ostriches do not bury their head in the sand. I mean, the more you thought about it, what would be the point of it anyway? He says the thing originates from the fact that ostriches dig a very large hole as a nest for their eggs in the sand. And that large hole can be as much as 8 feet wide. I mean, we're talking about a big bird here. And the male digs this big nest. And the eggs are way, way down in it, so that gives the eggs some protection from predators because you can't see it. Both the hen and the rooster, I guess that's what male and female ostriches are called, take turns superintending their eggs, and they often turn the eggs. You know, it makes sense. The eggs are cooking. You turn them. You keep turning them. They're cooking a long time. So with their beaks, they poke their heads down into that big hole, and they're turning their eggs. Well, from afar, if you saw an ostrich in the middle of egg turning, it would appear that that ostrich has its head in the sand. Correct? Yes, it would. It would look like a headless ostrich. And interestingly, the way they protect, so let's say a predator comes toward the nest, an ostrich does not stay there and fight to protect its eggs or young. It takes off running, and the effort is to make the predator go after it, so run after it. And due to the fact that ostriches are capable of running at sustained speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, most predators give up the chase after a while, and the eggs are safely back in their little hole in the sand. So there's a little ostrich information for those of you who might have desired it and might not, but I desire all kinds of information, truly. Okay. Also, just hearkening back to the other day, there was a story in the Sunday Post-Gazette about local AM radio. I was quoted quite often in it, and one of you has said they really loved the article because it brought back so many good memories, and especially the days of it really might have been the best talk lineup in the universe. I'm serious about that. At WTAE in the 80s. Uncle Dougie and me, Phil Music, and Devlin was there for a while. Myron Cope was on then. I mean, one after the other. We all sat in the same studio, took the same, and everyone had a different kind of a show. Everyone was a born either informer or entertainer, and it was this eclectic, wonderful station and offering. And that's what the emailer says. As you said in the article, each day was a variety of topics from the serious to the trivial. You were the greatest, the three of you were the greatest company during work and leisure. There is such a need on the Pittsburgh airwaves for that kind of balanced conversation, but I'm not going to hold my breath. That's from Elizabeth, and no, I wouldn't hold your breath, Elizabeth. Ain't happening. What happened in between that and what the disaster we have now is the consolidation of the ownership of broadcast media. And that consolidation obviously allowed a few large, deep-pocketed corporations to buy it all up. And so that particular part of the spectrum that was often owned locally and provided local conversation and didn't have some kind of a formatted national agenda that just aimed to be informative and entertaining, it disappeared. There was no room for it anymore. It's really one of the saddest things that happened, because it had a true negative impact on cities all over, towns all over the country. And we see it here too. So anyway, they're doing some kind of. It was funny. I mean, Uncle Dougie, Doug Hurst, got more ink in that piece than almost all of the living talkers now, because they can't hold a candle to him. Strangely, the two people that seemed to be quoted the most in the article were me and Mark Madden, who also was at WTAE for a while. his growling presence, which scared the heck out of me. But he, it turns out, is an extremely bright and does get it. For those of you who don't listen, it's, he can be tough to listen to, but he does he knows how to do the format. And it did say, it mentioned what I thought was interesting for you oldsters. It of course mentioned Wendy and Ed King's program on KDKA, which started in the 50s, and was the first kind of talk radio here. And they would take callers, but you couldn't hear them. The audience couldn't hear them. They'd call the show, Ed would talk to them, Ed would tell you what they were saying, and that was the way talk sort of started here. The reporter who did the piece, Maria Shulo, I think her name is, said that my show now, this show, is most akin, probably, takes us almost full circle back to what Wendy and Ed King were doing, in that I now, for instance, as I'm doing right now, will read emails to you from other listeners, and we still are able to, in that way, have a conversation and talk. And obviously we do have a phone line, but and I think it's quite clear that whether I intended it or not, I'm probably a pioneer in that if this kind of community talk radio is going to continue and it will, because there's always a demand for it. It will happen in all likelihood, much like it's happening here on the internet. Although, who the heck knows? Everything changes, so. And just one more, if you don't mind. Why am I not seeing this? Okay, never mind. And Chuck, thank you so much for the picture, side-by-side pictures of Senator Joe McCarthy and Senator Ted Cruz, because I keep saying Cruz looks exactly like him, and I now have absolute proof. It's uncanny. Both demagogues, both have the exact same look, face, mannerisms, and Jess says she'll put those pictures up on my Facebook page and Twitter account, so you can see that, because it's mind blowing. If you haven't, I'd never actually seen the two of them together until Chuck sent me this, and wow, it's even more extraordinary, the resemblance, than I had suspected. Chris writes, I've been enjoying the continuing series in the Post-Gazette about the history of radio in Pittsburgh. Which, by the way, if any place has a rich radio tradition, this city. This is where the first radio broadcast happened, right here. Westinghouse Engineers, right here. What was that? They broadcast the returns of the Coolidge election, I think. So it sort of began here, and certainly KDKA, one of the first stations. QED, one of the, I think, the first public station. Is that true? Yeah, educational station. There's a really strong history of being out front in broadcast and in movies, as we've pointed out throughout the week. So strangely, Pittsburgh, or not strangely, Pittsburgh, we often joke that it's always sort of 10 years late. In many respects, it's ahead of the game and has been. It was so sad, Chris writes, reading the article yesterday and thinking about Doug. Truly sad what Mark Madden said about Doug, but how true. And what Mark Madden said is what I have said often in the past, often in a ranting manner, which is that when they took Doug off the radio, they killed him. They killed him. There is anyone who knew Doug knows it. That was his life, and they deprived him of his life. There was no reason to live it. He couldn't. He died. He died young. He died broken. And he died because of all the radio stations in this town, there was not a one that would give a guy who was probably the most talented radio talker, again, all unique, but storyteller and character. There's not a station in town that could find an hour to give him. And that shows you, because when the corporate guys take over, they don't have any appreciation for something like that. They're just looking at formulas. They're looking at squeezing as much money out of the operation as they can. They don't give a damn about people. And in fact, they're leery of personalities because personalities can be powerful. And powerful personalities can be valuable. Consequently, they're more expensive. So who needs them? And if you actually train the audience to not expect any color, to not expect any personality, but to expect almost these robotized formats, well, then the corporate guys just get richer and richer and richer. Oh, wow. Chris says tomorrow would have been Doug's birthday. It's just, I mean, I read the article yesterday and spent a lot of time yesterday thinking about Doug. Truly. He and I did not always get along. There were a lot of, we worked together over the years for so long that it was sort of like a, like a brother-sister relationship in which sometimes you're hugging each other and other times you don't even want to, speak. He would make me so angry often. So I would just sort of give him short shrift and then I'd calm down and then we'd get back in each other's good graces. But no, they killed him. They killed him. No doubt about it. Mark knows it. I know it. Anybody who listened to Doug over the years and got to know him, because if you listened, you got to know him, knew it. Take that show away, kill him. What totally disgusted me is they took his radio show, okay, because they changed the format to let's see if we can bankrupt ourselves as fast as possible to this all business format that just went. They dropped off the radar immediately. Then they had also allowed Doug to do this weekend show. This is Renda Broadcasting, one of the fewer small broadcasting, locally owned still. And they had WJAS as well, which is the oldies station. And Doug, as anyone knew, was the oldies maven. He knew every rock and roll song that had ever been done. He knew all the old. You mentioned it, he knew it. He's like an encyclopedia. So he loved doing an oldies show, which he did on WJAS, I think on, I'm going to say Sunday nights, maybe Saturday nights. And so he had his talk show Monday through Friday. He had that on the weekends, and this was a happy man. So understandably, they go to a different format and get out of the talk business. But JAS is still up and running, and JAS is still a oldie station, and JAS could still use that wonderful Doug weekend program, but they didn't let him keep that. Believe me, if they had that one show once a week, would have kept him alive. You wonder why I hate the suits. It's hard to love them. I'll tell you that. It's hard to respect them. It's hard to like them. When you see, because when you're not one of the suits, and you see the damage they do to people, and don't even think about it. But these are business decisions. It has nothing to do with personal jerks. Horrible people. Okay. I'm trying to figure out where to go here. Oh, so on my way to work, belatedly today, I saw this guy that I see sometimes in the, shady side. I've seen him in Oakland. I think Jess maybe has seen him maybe in Lawrenceville. When I describe him, you'll tell me. He's a guy on a bike, and he has attached a car bumper.
I have seen
Have you seen him?
Yeah.
He has attached a car bumper to his handlebars, so that as he rides down, it looks sort of very cumbersome and it looks odd, but as he rides his bike around, he does not have to worry. I'm sure he did it in self-defense. He has created a space which says you can't get any closer to me than this. You guys have them, I want one. So it's an odd sight, but I know. I was on the bus the other day and somebody was mentioning, the guy with the car bumper. And I thought, sure, I know the guy with the car bumper. And if you ever see him, that's a guy who had an idea, and it's a dang fine idea, and somehow he jerry-rigged it. So I saw him today, and I thought I'd give him a shout-out, because the first time you see it, you can't figure out what it is you're looking at, and then you realize, my God, that's a bumper. Sure it is. And why not, from his point of view? Let me get a break out of the way, and then I want to come back. I rarely watch 60 Minutes, but because I was watching the Steeler game last night, yesterday afternoon and into the evening, it came on after, and so I didn't watch it religiously. I was in and out, but it was on, and I heard a few things that I heard more than a few things that just blew me away, but one in particular that I'd like to talk to you about, and it has to do with the corruption on Capitol Hill. And as one person put it, you think these guys can't agree on anything? They can. Oh, they agree. They agree on all sorts of things, like the kind of loopholes that they put into ethics legislation and anything that could in any way affect them. They always get bipartisan agreement on anything that will allow them to do things that in the real world would be considered at best unethical. And generally, in reality, I think they'd be considered criminal. That kind of conduct on Capitol Hill gets wide bipartisan support. So, for those of you who happily missed that piece, I am going to stick a little worm in your ear today. But I think there's something we could do about that, seriously. If some people wanted to, all you organizer types out there, I think this is something people would happily organize around, especially since we've seen these clowns in action lately. Yes, caller?
Hi, Lynn. It's PJ from Greensburg.
Hi, PJ.
I'll make it quick. Just the radio thing you were talking about, Pittsburgh being early in radio. So early, in fact, that KDKA is the only station, because it was the first east of the Mississippi with a K.
That's right. No, it's not.
Yeah.
You know why? Because there's one in this building.
With a K?
WRRK.
KQV.
So KQV is that old also?
What? Well, I don't know if it's that old, but it's on the wrong side of the Mississippi to have a K in front of it.
I see. I always heard it was just KDKA. What's up with that?
Well, stop and think. I mean, every other station, until now, now they have the X and they've got blah, blah, blah. But it used to be W, right? W is what it is. It's WABC in New York. It's KABC in L.A. That's the way it works. And KDKA is an outlier because all the Ks are that away, except there's KQV, which is even weird because it only has 3 letters.
Well, is it WKQV,
well, some do.
Though?
No.
Really? Because that's the X, is WXXP or whatever.
No,
they just drop the W and just go by the X.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know, but now I'm thinking of other radio stations that have 3 letters.
Speculation.
Like there's...
And the other thing is, if anybody wants to see the bumper bike guy, just type in bumper bike dude on YouTube.
Oh, you're kidding. He's on YouTube
already. There's a video where they interview him.
Oh. Is he, have you, what does he say?
He's a little bit out there.
He is. He's a little odd. He looks a little odd to me.
Yeah, he's a little odd. And there's some interesting comments posted below. So if anybody wants to see him, though, he's on there.
You look
bumper bike dude is what you type in.
Okay, bumper bike dude will get you to the guy I saw parade.
I'm going to investigate KQV and I'll get back to you.
Thank you, PJ. Okay, goodbye. Goodbye. Let's hit that break and be right back.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Go to the all-new bergbargains.com for the best deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. Log on for great deals from Best of Pittsburgh 2013 winners. Sign up for the weekly email for your chance to win $100 in services from the Swickley Spa. The all-new bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains, bergbargains.com.
Hi, Lynn. Les Ludwig, your scandal-free independent candidate for mayor of Pittsburgh, the founder of a program that produces revenue opportunities for government, the best long-term news in town. No longer the usual wait for taxes to go up at budget time. Pittsburgh's home, and I've brought a new way to finance government to city council. That thinking is spreading like fire, with 7 cities from Philly to L.A. building finance programs based on it. An example, one community in California has signed a long-term $600,000 per year contract with a soft drink company. Right now, we have over $1 million that may be used to reduce taxes right here in Pittsburgh. Stay tuned as I work as your mayor, building new thinking for a better future. Vote Ludwig, the only scandal-free independent candidate.
Paid for by Les Ludwig for mayor of Pittsburgh.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay, now this thing, and again, I wasn't taking notes, so maybe I'm going to get some of this wrong, and it's going to be very paraphrased. But there's an ability, there's a loophole that when you send a campaign some money because you support that candidate, and I've done that, my assumption is that money is going to help defray whatever costs are necessary to elect or re-elect that candidate. My money's going to go for, and I really don't care what, I assume they'll use it wisely. That, it goes for, if they want it to help their advertising costs, pay for gas for people who got to get around, bumper stickers, anything, pay the people that they do have on staff, whatever, volunteer, feeding the volunteers, whatever. I will give money. But what I learned on 60 Minutes was that money, and so often there's so much more of it than they use, that money can be can be used by the senator or congressperson pretty much at will. I mean, they don't have to use it they can use it on personal stuff. They can use it for trips. One was took a trip to Scotland with this, that. Oh, yeah, you sort of put down that this was in regard, come up with some BS-y way of making it sound like it was related in some way to their work. And I'll tell you what. I mean, we're talking tons of money here. And we're talking Democrats and Republicans who screw with it. Or all these little things where they can lend themselves money and then they charge themselves this exorbitant interest rate where then they make money by lending themselves. You cannot imagine. They are, they'd be crooks in the real world. They'd certainly be unethical people. So, what I was thinking is I'm not so sure I'm going to give money to any candidates anymore. And I think this is one of the things that you can do. You can tell candidates that you've given money in the past. And I'm not talking, I guess I am talking maybe about even local. They seem to be able to use it for whatever. I will give you money again when you help pass legislation that requires you to use money gotten from the likes of me to help you get elected only for that purpose. Only. And if there's stuff left over, I don't know, we think about that, but it ain't going for big dinners or so you can fly your family out to that's not what I'm giving you money for. And this is the kind of thing that we don't pay any attention to. And they said that there have been bills on the floor it never got to the floor. There have been bills offered up from Republicans and Democrats to close these loopholes. Well, I guess it's a fool's errand because they'll never even get to a committee. They're dead in the water. Dead in the water. So now that we've seen how this body is so dysfunctional, the Congress of the United States, and then you see something like that, I am not inclined to give any of them another red cent. And even if they themselves don't engage in these unethical, quasi-criminal activities of taking my money and then turning around and using it for something I did not intend it to be used for, well then, if you deny them money in the future, maybe they get on board and co-sponsor some of that. Like I know the guy who's written the legislation in the Senate is a jerk, a Republican named Vitter. But he's the one who wrote the legislation. How about I write Senator Casey and said, I've given money to you in the past. I will not give you another cent unless you co-sponsor that legislation with Vitter. And find a bunch of other co-sponsors because no more money. They're shameless. And then there was the nepotism thing. So what a lot of people do, so they have all this money, and they put their entire families on their payroll. The biggest abuser in that regard, this really blew my mind, was the libertarian Ron Paul, now retired, although he left us his son, Rand. Ron Paul, he gets people to just really root for him because he's always out there talking about how government wastes money and confiscates our money and uses it for things that are unnecessary, that government is too big because of all these reasons. He's libertarian. Well, where the hell then does he get off? Taking all this money that comes in and employing, I forget what they said. It was like every family member to third cousins 14 times removed was on his staff. Granddaughters-in-law, children, wives, sisters, brothers-in-law, all enriched by his position, given money that was given to him not for that purpose. And Ron Paul doesn't see that as an abuse of government. That's the one that blew me away. So Ron Paul has been unmasked. Oh, yeah, he doesn't like expropriating the money of hardworking people and then frittering it away by the government, enriching all kinds of people who don't deserve it. Redistribution of your wealth. Unless, of course, it's going to enrich his family and his family's family and his family's family's family in perpetuity. These people are shameless. And the article made clear that not all members of Congress operate like this, that some are, in fact, very careful. I would love to know who those are, but I would also love then to tell them, get behind the legislation that closes these loopholes up. What they've given themselves is sort of a bottomless pit of a slush fund. And they're asking me, the next time Casey asks me for money, I'm going to say, sorry, buddy. Absolutely not. Not unless you can give me a full accounting of where every red cent went. I usually don't watch 60 Minutes. I shouldn't have watched 60 Minutes. And then it was, oh my God, it was Dick Cheney, and I actually could see his heart. I always said he didn't have one, and then there was evidence. They showed his heart lying in this dish. The heart they took out of him when he had the heart transplant. And it was this bloated, ugly mass of red tissue. And it was Dick Cheney's heart. Oh, God. Okay. Now what? Here, speaking of, this is a little piece I saw today. And this is one of those, viewer beware, just because you saw it on TV, just because, here's people writing me about K-stations. Just a second. KQV was one of Pittsburgh's 5 original AM stations, signing on as 8ZAE on November 19th, 1919? Predating KDKA, which was granted the distinction of being, as KDKA claimed, the world's first commercially licensed station on November 2nd, 1920. KQV did not receive a commercial license until January of 1922, despite having started transmitting 3 years earlier. KQV's call letters reportedly stand for King of the Quaker Valley. 4 radio stations east of the Mississippi have call letters which starts with K. Okay, so it's not just KD. It's KQV and KDKA here. And, KYW in Philadelphia. And KFIZ in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. KQV is the only one of these stations that has never had an associated TV station. And it also is one of the few still very much locally owned. So there's the information on K stations, although Leon might have something new. 3 stations, he says, were grandfathered by the Federal Communications Commission when the standards were set that stations west of the Mississippi would be K and east would be W. And he says those 3 grandfathered were KD, KQV, and KYW, all in Pennsylvania. And so I don't know how this one in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin got away with what they did, but there you have it. So, wait a minute. Ed wants to talk about 60 Minutes. You always have a unique and interesting show. Thank you. The money on the 60 Minutes show was from leadership PACs. Oh, not campaign funds. Yeah, but my understanding as I was listening is that because they could not use campaign funds, because they did write ethics legislation for anything they wanted, they created something called a leadership PAC. And you didn't have to be a leader. It just was a way, because then leadership PACs could be used for anything. And the money, a lot of money that raised for campaign contributions are siphoned off into these leadership PACs. That's how I understood it. They always have a way. Listen, they pass legislation and say, we have cleaned this up. And then of course, within probably seconds, they're meeting in their little closed door rooms and figuring out a way to pull, creative accounting, to pull that money out somehow and not have it fall under the law that they themselves passed, in which they probably parade around showing how honest and transparent they are. If these guys think for 1 minute that we, the American people, left, right, and inside out, south, north, east, and west, any iteration of an American citizen, if they don't realize that we have pretty much had it, we have pretty much. It's not up to here. It is hit the ceiling and gone through it onto the next floor. We have had it. And I appreciate 60 Minutes for keeping people's anger up and for pointing out, again, all of these things that righteously we should be angry about. So Fox News and that whole bunch of blowhards, Hannity, and they have been, nonstop trying to show how Obamacare is not working. And clearly there is some kind of a technical issue that does need to be addressed and is. But that's not substance. That's that's not the substance of the law. So some reporter, Joan McCarter, did a wonderful job. Oh, no. I'm giving credit to the wrong reporter. Eric Stern. And he happened to catch Hannity's show. And Hannity was trotting out real-life victims of Obamacare. And this is one sad story after another of people who were just being destroyed, their businesses, their lives, everything by Obamacare. And they all told their sad stories. And this reporter, Eric Stern, wrote down all of the sad stories. And then he went looking for all of these folks who Hannity had trotted out. And here's part of what he found. The first one he tracked down was a guy named Paul Cox and his wife Michelle of North Carolina. And they had told Hannity that they had to cut the hours, and we're hearing this kind of thing a lot, they had to cut the hours of their employees in their construction business because they just couldn't afford to insure them under Obamacare. Well, after the real reporter, as opposed to Hannity, had talked to these guys, he said, so how many employees do you have? Well, they had something like 4 or 5. He said, Obamacare doesn't have any effect on you. Obamacare has no effect on businesses with 49 employees or less. So he asked the guy, so it wasn't Obamacare that made you cut your, reduced your workforce? Or why did you do that? Because Obamacare did not make you do that. And here's what the guy says. Well, no, I haven't been forced to do so. It's just that I've chosen to do so. I have to deal with increased costs. The reporter says to him, well, what costs? And, what costs? Are there any, these costs you're talking about, are they related to Obamacare? The reporter reports there was a long pause, after which he said he'd call me back. He never did. Okay, so that was one of Hannity's victims. And he looked further into his situation, and he said, actually, this guy who complained that Obamacare had forced him to lay off workers, actually, he could be getting a tax credit under Obamacare to help provide insurance to his employees. So the reporter was left to believe that, he probably doesn't care as much about his poor employees' well-being as he wanted the audience to believe. The only requirement for this guy who was boo-hooing on Hannity as an employer under the Affordable Care Act is that he had to inform his employees of the existence of the new health insurance exchange. That is something he is by law supposed to do. It costs him nothing. It costs him zilch. Okay. Then there was this other woman who the reporter tracked down that had been on Hannity boo-hooing, Allison Denage, who had told Hannity, I pay over $13,000 a year in premiums, and I just got a letter from Blue Cross saying that my current policy is not in compliance with the Affordable Care Act, so it was being discontinued and replaced. And I also have a daughter with a pre-existing condition who's never been covered. I'm so angry because Obama promised that we could keep our existing policies. So the reporter tracks her down by telephone after her Hannity interview, and he asked her, ma'am, did you check out the healthcare exchange? Of course she had not. He said, well, I did for you. And I found that you could be able to get a plan for around $7,600 as opposed to the $13,000 you're paying. So almost half of what you're paying, which would include coverage of your uninsured daughter. So on the exchange, the reporter found this nitwit, crybaby, a 60% reduction from what she would have had to pay on the pre-Obamacare market, and because Obamacare, got rid of the pre-existing condition crap. She could do that and cover her daughter. I wonder if she said thank you. On and on. These stories go on and on. It says something about the absolute chutzpah, excuse me for the proper pronunciation there, the extraordinary chutzpah of these Hannitys and their ilk, that they will parade these people around. And if anybody wants to even just, dig 1/32 of an inch down into their sad, sad stories about how Obamacare is destroying them and their employees and their children, that in fact the stories they should be telling are quite the opposite. But if you know people who listen to Hannity, and listen to Rush, listen to Fox, this is where they get all of their information. Caller, go ahead, please.
How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't resist when you talked about small business. And I won't paint a broad brush over the whole small business community. But I just want to tell these people that are slave owners, which I call them, they can always shut their business down and go get a job because nobody's telling them to keep that business. They're the same people that already complain they're working so hard, they can't give you raises, they can't have hospitalization, they can't do any of that. But they're making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. And this Obamacare is going to have them, there are going to be a lot of cheaters out there on that. And I think it's a great thing, the Obamacare, but you're going to have more of that cheating and tax evasion.
Yes. I hear you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anthony wrote, Uncle Dougie was the best. Period. Doug, damn it. He was just, I know, never mind. I mean, I talked to him about doing the kind of thing I was doing, and I know Lawrence, his producer, was constantly telling him, you gotta just, come on, shake it off and do just a little bit of reinvention. But Doug was so stubborn, and he was so depressed. He just couldn't. He couldn't make that change. Okay, final break.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper Best of Pittsburgh 2013 is available now. Pick up one today for the results of our annual readers poll. Plus, Bare Naked Ladies, Dylan Moran, and the Pittsburgh Opera's Aida, and News of the Weird. Pittsburgh City Paper's Best of Pittsburgh 2013. Available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania. And on the web at pghcitypaper.com. And on your smartphone with GPS-enabled music, event, and restaurant, and Best of Pittsburgh listings at citypapermobile.com.
While cutting molding with a 12-inch dual compound miter saw, while holding a newborn baby in your arms, when face-to-face with a congregation of alligators, with the ball in your hands and the entire freaking season on the line.
There are a million places you'd never consider texting, so why would you do it while driving? NASCAR driver Casey Kane here, asking you to please stop the text, and together we can stop the wrecks.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Get the message at stoptextstopwrecks.org.
Come to Little's for all of your back-to-school needs. Little's has everything for all ages to stay in style for this upcoming school season. Check out the large selection from Doc Marten, Steve Madden, UGG, Clarks, Lely Kelly, New Balance, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
I want to thank the person who sent me this. I don't have time to, I will read it later. The headline is American deficit shrinking at fastest pace since World War II, and that happened before the fiscal cliff. And this is in response to Tea Party Dave, who called on Friday and finally made me, I think that's the first guy I've dumped on the internet. I used to dump people on radio a lot, but I dumped them. And this is an article. I will read it. It's from Investors Business Daily. I hardly think that sounds like a liberal's rag, but it says, believe it or not, the federal deficit has fallen faster over the past 3 years than it has in any such stretch since demobilization from World War II. And frankly, that would put it before, much of that, before sequestration. Because he was trying to, Tea Party Dave, was trying to suggest that that none of this, the deficit went down under Obama just because the Republicans forced sequestration. Under Reagan, the deficit grew by more than 2.5 times what it had been when he took office. These Republicans, they're amazing because they don't believe in bringing any money in. They don't believe in taxes. They just believe in spending or giving it all to their corporate buddies. Clinton came in with a huge deficit, of course, handed to him by a Republican, and he whittled that baby way, way, way down. George W. Bush took that and ballooned it, twice over. Then Obama has handed off that disaster, plus an economy that was about to go absolutely kaplooey, by another fine 8 years of Republican governance. And he now has, dropped it down. So I'll try to look at this more carefully so I can give you the numbers. When I'm very bad at keeping numbers in my head. Did you see that video of those out-of-shape, disgusting Boy Scout? They called them Boy Scouts? They look like Boy Scout leaders, right? You didn't see that? He is a leader, a Boy Scout leader, who was in a state park in Utah where they have these amazing rock formations, and the video was of this nitwit and his nitwit friends taking this huge boulder that was at this bazaar and knocking it over. This is a rock formation that has been there since the Jurassic-era. Well, their happy video of them destroying something that had stood throughout human history until these bozos encountered it, of course, went viral. And the Boy Scout leader said, well, we thought it was dangerous and it could fall on somebody, so we just thought we'd knock it down. They're facing charges for what they did there to a state park. But it turns out that someone who saw the video said, wait a minute, that looks like Glenn Taylor. Why, I know Glenn Taylor, because he's the guy who filed a suit claiming he was totally disabled by a 2009 car accident and had suffered great pain, disability, impairment, and loss of life quality. Now, I got to tell you, somebody with total disability and that kind of misery, I don't think would want millions of people to see him pushing a huge rock off its base. So the county attorney's office is reviewing the case. An investigation is ongoing. He's in trouble on more than one front, and of course, efforts to reach him about his disability claim were not responded to. He's so disabled he can't even get to the phone. How do you expect the poor guy to get to the phone? Okay. What else? New York Times yesterday had this piece about the tie, the men's ties, how it's sort of dead, that the leaders of the world, when they met recently, they weren't wearing ties. Obama wasn't, David Cameron wasn't, Putin wasn't, and Merkel wasn't. I mean, they weren't wearing ties. And that apparently was at Cameron's request. He said, listen, let's just be relaxed and not be. And we know that fewer and fewer places of work are requiring ties to be used. So if you're a tie maker, you've fallen on not great days. It is true. Tie sales have dropped more than half since 1995. I mean, it used to be an over $1 billion industry, and now it's way down, way down. The number of men who bother to buy even one tie a year has been plummeting. And that brings up, the question of what good are they anyway? I mean, I imagine they're uncomfortable. The one good they do is they allow men who don't have as many accessories to choose from as women do to sort of personalize their wardrobe. It does allow for some sense of, color or personality if you have to wear a suit. But, on the West Coast, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in any office wearing a suit. And they do see the demise of the tie as starting about the tech bubble time when all those, younger people who were gazillionaires and employing tons of, nerds that, would go to work, in hoodies. Never mind, a suit without a tie. So it's amazing to see that the tie will never disappear. I mean, it has to be there for like formal occasions. But it has always struck me as a pretty ridiculous thing, in fact. And I'm sure a lot of men would be very happy not to ever have to wear one. I thought a great quote from a guy who does work in the entertainment industry. They don't wear ties. He's a producer. And he says about ties, it's stupid. It makes no sense. What does it do? It's just a decoration, an affectation. If I see a colleague wearing a tie, I usually ask if they're going to a funeral or a job interview or if they've been indicted. Yeah. Okay. And on that, I think we'll call it a day. And tomorrow, I believe my sister Susan will be joining us, and I hope my car will be starting in a timely fashion. And I'll look forward to spending some time with you. Okay? Have a great day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.